Small drops of water make an ocean. Just like that, if you can accomplish small successes, it will turn into something bigger and better. Small drops of water make an ocean. Just like that, if you can accomplish small successes, it will turn into something bigger and better.
Well, Monday, the 17th day of May 2021. Glad you could keep it TV47. As always, I am here to make sure that your week starts on a good note as we all look forward to an incredible one ahead. So much lined up for you. Of course, we do not run away from talking matters BBI. Terrible weekend for the proponents, or so to speak. Of course, after this contemptuous ruling by a 5 High Court judge bench that, overturned all these processes and, of course, blocked this government-backed plan to make fundamental changes in the Constitution or within the Constitution. And therefore, these individuals or the proponents seek to appeal this. The process already has begun. What would it mean and what way forward? Are there likelihoods that they would be successful with this appeal? This even as the dissenting voices continue to celebrate in jubilation and arguing that they have slim chances, or the proponents have slim chances, even if they seek to appeal. We'll be looking at this on the broadcast this morning. Indeed, a incredible conversation lined up for you. Make sure that you keep it right here as we look at all these important conversations. What way forward, even as the country stares at a very crucial moment. Remember, this is crucial also in regards to what will shape or we realign the 2022 general elections. Joining us for this conversation this morning, we're expecting Professor George Wajackoyah, also Professor Edward Kisiang'ani, and legal expert Kibe Mungai, as we ponder on this conversation. Also later on, we discuss this crucial day for the donkeys, and we have specialists who look into this and they tell us what it is that, of course, this world of the donkey speaks of. There's so much for you to learn, so make sure that you keep it right here, and I'll be glad to take you through. #Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela. TV47K is how you get to interact with us. We sample some of your comments as we proceed with the broadcast. Important that you are part and parcel of this conversation. We value your feedback so much. So, as always, the papers, what do we have in store? And also, we do not forget to speak of what has played out across the global fraternity. It is quite tight in the Israeli scene, also not so rosy with Kenya and Somalia amidst this conversation that, of course, the indifferences continue to grow bigger and bigger. John Mahama, former Ghana's president, of course, was one of the picked individuals to, just debate or help ponder. I was a special envoy in regards to the instability that continues to linger in Somalia. Somalia says no to that because they feel that John Mahama has close ties with officials from Kenya. What could be informing this? And what then does it mean in terms of having a peaceful coexistence between these two nations? We discuss that as we continue with the broadcast. First, let's look at the People's Daily, or the People Daily, and then the Standard newspaper and the Daily Nation. Front page of the People Daily: TSC rolls out programs to capture teachers' data. The biometric system being piloted in 143 schools is expected to improve efficiency in service delivery. Remember, the competency-based curriculum is on. This amidst lots of controversy with complaints that maybe teachers were not ready, neither were students, but as it is, the government is determined to make sure that this sails through. And well, we get to see also the biometric system that TSC spoke about. This will hugely come in to ensure that it also curbs the cheating cases that have been mentioned earlier on. We'll look at the matters education as we proceed. Why by-elections are acid test for leaders. We are expecting these by-elections, of course, Bonchari. We have the Kiambaa one. We also have the Juja one. Yes, Jubilee Party candidate Zebedeo Opore campaigns at shopping center that is in Bonchari constituency on Saturday ahead of the mini poll slated for tomorrow. We'll be waiting to see what plays out in regards to this particular case, so much so, and of course painting a great picture of what is likely to play out in 2022. A majority of leaders or key leaders using these by-elections as litmus tests to probably just determine how strong they could be in regards to their political terrains, or whether they pick strongholds from these by-election spots or not. Kome to know fate for CJ position. A story captured on page 6. Search for the next CJ having been picked by the JSC, and her name proceeded to the National Assembly and of course to the President. We can only wait to see what then of course will play out, and whether she will be picked as the next CJ of the country amidst a time where it is all not rosy between the arms of governments. And then in this particular one, we're speaking about the executive and the judiciary. Of course, the latest report on the BBI, or the latest ruling on the BBI, being amongst one of the key things that of course she seeks to face as the Chief Justice, as of course she also strive to make sure that she brings in the peaceful coexistence, so that at least these arms of government can work in tandem. My case for building bridges initiative, grounds of appeal. The decision that President Uhuru Kenyatta violated the Constitution was irrational and not subject to litigation, that the president, both as head of state as a citizen, has constitutional right to instigate and promote constitutional changes through popular initiative, that the ratification by the county assemblies and endorsement by more than 1 million Kenyans is a demonstration that ordinary citizens owned the document. Now, that the government participation in promotion of the bill was meant to support the aspiration of Wanjiku. In a nutshell, what it is that Attorney General has moved to court to present this as an appeal to rescue the BBI bill after a shock verdict by the High Court that initiated, or that initiative is, or spoke of a scenario where that initiative is an illegality, and that the president is not mandated to institute such changes. A story captured on page 4. And we'll be looking at that. Remember, it, of course, forms the basis of our conversation this particular morning. As you can see, a picture of Kihara Karaoke, first respondent, Attorney General being dissatisfied with the decision of the 5-judge bench, intends to appeal the same. We see his face. We know it's the face of the president, one of the key individuals that have, had his fair share of battles mated upon him, because the argument is that he failed to advise the president's office accordingly in regards to that. We'll be looking at it as we proceed with the broadcast. That one on TSC takes page 2, and Homa Bay representatives told off or to keep off health facilities. The health story is quite a problem in the country, continues to be one of the toughest things that the country or the Jubilee government ought to deal with, to make sure that at least we're able to sail out of this problem of COVID-19, without having to probably reverse the gains on the other numerous health matters that we have addressed over time. And so we'll be looking at that later on as we continue. Let's look at what other papers speak of. And here we are, the Daily Nation. Parents scramble for Form 1 slots in top schools. Also one of the key things that continues to bedevil the Ministry of Education, the decision to delay Form 1 selection for 6 weeks. That is after the release of the Standard 8 exam results has opened a window to aggressive canvassing for vacancies, especially in top performing secondary schools. And we'll be looking at that. Is a story captured on page on the back page of the Daily Nation as students seek to secure slots in their preferred schools. Experts fold COVID strategy, fluctuation in positivity rate, misleading ones medic, and a story captured on page 12. Also, not just for generally probably the Ministry of Health, but technically for you, just to be reminded that you need to always wear your mask, social distance, and wash your hands, and make sure that you get a hold of the vaccine if it is available, to make sure that you qualify to go and ensure that you keep yourself safe. And therefore, this report, as captured on page 12, is one that we need to be alert on, where experts have followed the COVID strategy, and they speak of the fluctuation in positivity rate as information that is misleading, and therefore they warn that we need to take extra caution. Inside the 15-point case to salvage the BBI Memorandum of Appeal seeks to overturn last week's High Court ruling, and the stage is set for a legal battle in the Court of Appeal, with at least 3 cases set to be filed this week. Lawyers are in a race against time, as the Constitution provides that a referendum cannot be held less than a year before the general election. This means that the cases must be heard and determined by August, as captured on page 4 of the Daily Nation. We speak of it as we continue. New dawn as a 350 billion Lamu port rose to life. That is a good one. Long-awaited facility opens up for business with the arrival of the first ship on Thursday. A story captured on page 14. Great strides, and we'll be looking at that, and we hope that indeed it takes the shape expected and goes a long way in spearheading and steering this docket as expected. And Kitengela 4, pain and tears of missing man's kin. Mysterious disappearance of Jack Anyango in Kitengela last month is taking a heavy toll on his family. His mother and wife are now in hospital. That's quite unfortunate. A story captured on page 3. Remember, it's one that we've been following up for the longest of time, and comes along with lots of twists and turns. But then again, we hope that the investigative bodies will be able to get to the bottom of the same. Graft does not deserve amnesty. This is an opinion by one Kaltum Guyo, who calls for long and stiff custodial sentences or sentencing for corrupt individuals as deterrent to protect public interest. Those suggesting amnesty need to have their conscience and patriotism checked. A story captured on page 16. There's still so much on the Daily Nation. We proceed to look at that later on. The Standard newspaper, front page, judges have the right to annoy and be accountable. A story as captured on page 32 of the Standard newspaper, that in regards to the BBI process, how Ruto plans to storm Nyanza. Whether he turns this to be a stronghold is a question of wait and see, knowing how much of a grip Baba holds down there. Whether he will be welcomed again, equally a question of wait and see. But we are here to keep you up to tabs. World Bank tops list of external lenders. Well, definitely that would be expected. Simiyu, we are set for Olympic Games, and that is a story on Matters Sports. And we await to see how then athletes or the Olympics will take shape, and how, of course, our very own sportsmen and women will be able to carry the flag high. Tuju, the 40 minutes that saved my life, that also in one of the local stations, a story that has been captured in regards to his tough moments, the accidents that he's gone through, and how this really has changed his life. Uhuru Raila Power Team in BBI fight back. The Attorney General has filed a notice of petition and a certificate of urgency signaling a legal battle to overturn last week's verdict by 5 High Court judges and allow the BBI reggae to go on. Yes, we'll be looking at that this morning. As earlier mentioned, we'll have our guests who will help us ponder and look at what are the possible directions that this conversation will take. Brace for COVID-19 cases spike in July. Well, a cold moment, and therefore the respiratory conditions would probably, be triggered some more by the cold. We can only hope that we are careful enough to avoid such occurrences. Briefly on the roads, it's a Monday, and sometimes the roads can be bad most of the Monday mornings, and therefore it's only fair that I update you, having the privilege of getting to know what is playing out, so that when you're stepping out of the house, then you know what it is that you expect. Thika Road is not looking good this morning. There is some tenets of traffic. While it could be moving, it is all bad all the way down and going down to the city. That is from somewhere around Roysambu. So if you're taking Thika Road, you expect it to be more of a snarl up and going all the way down. You can tell with the amber or the yellow line that yes, there's some tenets of traffic, though it is moving, but this is likely to get you delayed if you're taking Thika Road and all the way down to somewhere around the Quiver Lounge, that is around Roasters there. You can tell now that it starts getting even heavier. If you're taking that direction, this is what you expect, and going down all the way to Garden City and all the way to KCA University, down to Utali College, to Muthaiga. It is all bad this morning, and of course proceeding to this other side where now it gets even tougher around Muthaiga suits there as you get to Pangani, because then of course the connections of numerous vehicles coming from Muthaiga, that is the other side, Kiambu Road, they tend to get that snarl up as vehicles struggle to get into the city, and therefore if you're taking that direction, you evidently can tell that it does not look good this morning. That is Thika Road, and down to Pangani Shopping Center, well, it eases up there as you get into the city, or as you're taking these other directions. The likes of Muranga Road, Forest Road are not looking so bad this morning. On this other side, around the Museum Lane or the Kenya Museum Society, some tenets of traffic, as you can see right there. Right here. So this is what it is that you expect if taking or when taking that direction. And then we look at other roads that could be likely are likely to be, you know, a bit jammed up. This is Mombasa Road. Mombasa Road as well is not looking so good this morning. All the way down from this point of Cabanas, you can tell it's quite heavy. After that connection from Embakasi or the airport road, you tell it is quite heavy this morning on Mombasa Road. So if taking that direction, definitely you need to step out as early as now. Some roadworks ongoing around General Motors, and of course also informing traffic when you're going to Mombasa Road, that is from the city. And on this other side also, the traffic is a little bit heavy, and you know, taking small steps or baby steps, so to speak, as you also get to connect to the southern bypass, which is not bad this morning. And then going all the way down to around these areas of South B, South C, you find that it's quite heavy on Mombasa Road, around the NTSA, around Mota. Definitely not looking so good this morning. So if taking Mombasa Road, that is what you expect. It's a jammed up affair down there, and we all hope that it eases up. Like I said, it's a Monday morning. You know what to expect. Most of the Monday mornings are never friendly, and especially with this chilly morning. And there you go, down pretty much of a heavy moment on the roads this morning. And on this other side, let's see what is happening. This is within the city as you get to connect to the CBD processional way is also not so bad. So within the city, it's not so bad. And Gong Road on this other side is not as ugly as the other two main roads, but you find that there's some tenets on small bits. So if you're taking Gong Road, also that is what to expect this morning, even as you connect to the likes of Mbagathi and down, dropping you to Langata Road. And here is Langata Road. Let's see what Langata Road looks like this morning. Yes, it's also quite heavy as you're trying to find yourself into the city. So it means that this morning is not so good on the roads. And there you go. And the roadwork still ongoing around the connection between Langata Road and Mbagathi Way. And so somewhere around here is where it's quite heavy. Mbagathi Way on the other end is not looking so bad, as I have said, and going all the way and to connect to Gong Road. Well, some tenets of traffic somewhere along Mbagathi Road, but it is not as ugly as it is with the other roads or on the other roads. Dennis Street, not so bad around Lavington and Kileleshwa, as you also get to connect to James Gishuru and Gitanga Road this morning, all clear. Gitanga Road is down here, not looking so bad as you find yourself into the sides of Kawangware. James Gishuru on the other side as you came to connect to the T junction is also not so bad. And all the way to Wajackoyah from James Gishuru, some tenets of traffic and roadworks ongoing around ABC Place as you can see. But Wajackoyah is not as ugly as you would imagine this morning, apart from these small places where you get that connection and to different parts or different roads. Like I said, the likes of Muranga Road not looking so bad this morning, and same applies to the likes of Red Hill, which is not as bad, and also that one that is Limuru Road, also not as bad this morning. The northern bypass, or almost all the bypasses, not looking bad. For the very first time, we've seen some tenets of traffic on the southern bypass, so that means it's not really a good morning on the roads. And yes, here we go. I guess there's nothing much that would probably get us worried on the roads. In the event that there'll be something, I'll make sure that I keep you up to tab. So keep dropping those tweets, enlighten us on what is happening wherever it is that you are, so that we are all up to par. As you can see, around Kasarani Mwiki is not looking so bad, and that side of Roysambu, Mirema, Kamiti Road, all rosy this morning. And then I'll be here, like I have said, to make sure that you are updated. Now, let's briefly look at what we have prepared for you in terms of news. And bodies of two young men, that is from Rufiru village in Ithanga, Muranga County, were allegedly drowned into Thika River a week ago, and they have been retrieved. Nicholas Maitha and Asman Kamau were allegedly drowned by police officers while handcuffed on allegations of brewing illicit liquor. Their families are now crying for justice and have allayed fears that police might have tampered with the evidence after the bodies were retrieved, as Mwangi Maina reports.
Na tukaona wenye wanajua kuogelea waogelee, tuanze kutafuta mili juu hatuna suluhisho na tunataka hiyo mili. Wakaingia kwa maji wakatafuta, tukafika huko chini. Kufika huko chini wakachoka, mmoja akakatwa mkono, anaitwa Mweni, akakatwa mkono juu ya kuingia huko ndani ya maji. Ndio tulipata tukifika huko mbele tukapata mwili mmoja. Huo mwili ulikuwa ni kama umeoza, acha niseme ni kama umeoza, na huo mwili ulikuwa ni wa brother. So mimi nataka serikali ingililie. Mkono mmoja ulikuwa na alama ya pingu, lakini hakuwa na pingu. Tulipopeleka huyo mwingine akapatikana na alikuwa na pingu. Hata picha zilipigwa alikuwa na pingu. So tunataka kujua kuliendaje wakati wa kutoka hapo kwa maji kutolewa nje, pingu zilienda wapi? Hiyo tunataka kujua.
Pingu hata kama walitoa jana, tunadhibitishwa kwamba kuna jamaa wengine walikuja na akapiga hiyo picha akiwa na hizo pingu. So hata kama atasema hakuwa na pingu, si tunadhibitishwa kwamba alikuwa na pingu juu sisi wenyewe tulimpiga picha akiwa na pingu.
Nataka serikali ingililie na itoe uamuzi mzuri, ndio tujue tunataka haki ya watoto wetu. Juu watoto si wanyama, si umbwa. Polisi anafaa akishika mtu ampeleke polisi, si kumtupa kwa maji. Kwa maji si polisi.
Kisumu East Member of Parliament Shakil Shabir has confirmed his intention of defending his seat as an independent candidate despite calls to join ODM party. He said his commitment is to serve the people of Kisumu East as opposed to members of the party, as James Okoth reports from Kisumu.
The lawmaker who spoke in Kisumu East while distributing maize to families displaced by floods at Gwanda area also expressed concerns over the preparedness of Kisumu County to hold the Madaraka Day celebrations on 1st June. He says there hasn't been any consultation concerning the same.
Until now, we as parliamentarians have not even been called to say this is what we are doing. So I don't know the preparedness of the county. I hope and pray that they are prepared. That is nothing. Nothing. No conversations, no nothing. No meetings, no nothing. Not even a letter saying that this is what we are doing.
He also condemned the recent demolitions by the county government of Kisumu, saying that the county government ought to support a people-driven economy.
I think that something is somewhere wrong. Yeah, we cannot go around demolishing those things without working with them and saying, where are we going to put you? I was the mayor of the city. We understand what has to be done, but we need to discuss and we need to empower. You cannot go and demolish somebody's kiosk and somebody brings containers where I don't know what happens. Bring people, they bring and they're going to demolish it. And then after some time, somebody else moves in. So I think as much as we are talking about development of Kisumu, we need directive. And then Kisumu can be only developed by a coordinated effort of all the leaders.
The former mayor of Kisumu municipality and the third-term legislator also said he will be defending his seat as an independent candidate after he ditched ODM during the 2017 polls.
I will be standing as an MP of independent. I shall not be going back. In the cage, you are out of the cage. And I've spoken to my mentor, my Baba. He brought me into politics. So I owe him everything. But you know, the ODM system here, the ODM party here has lost direction. It is not that the fact is the party should be serving the people. But here the people they want the people to serve the party. And they want to force them and they want to beat them and they want to do many things. So the people are saying no. So I think once and until the party renovates itself to serve the people, I have left them very nicely. They threw me out. I said, thank you so much. I went my side.
James Okoth for TV47.
Attorney General Kihara Kariuki has filed a notice of appeal to challenge the High Court's decision which rendered the BBI constitutional amendment process illegal. The BBI proponents have been claiming that the ruling was a means of settling scores with the judiciary, citing President Kenyatta's dark history with the third arm of government. A section of members of County Assembly have now warned that the judiciary executive wrangles could plunge the country into political chaos ahead of the next year's general elections.
A few hours after President Uhuru Kenyatta's handshake partner ODM leader Raila Odinga and the BBI task force swore to appeal against Thursday's court order that rendered the BBI constitutional amendment process illegal and unconstitutional, Attorney General Kihara Kariuki has expressed the government's interest in appealing against the 5-judge ruling. According to the notice of appeal seen by TV47, the Attorney General claims his office will suffer prejudice if the stay orders are not granted and cause him and Kenyans an irreparable harm.
I find very slim chances of success on any appeal because certain elements of breach of law and the constitution were so glaring that they will not be able to see the light of the day.
It'll cover almost every part which was contentious. Meaning hata hawa wakienda appeal, it will be very difficult for it to succeed.
Justices Joel Ngugi, George Odunga, Jairus Ngaah, Teresia Madheka, and Chacha Mwita have questioned the foundation of the BBI process, claiming that President Uhuru Kenyatta does not have the power to initiate a constitutional amendment. The court further gave 15 orders, including the constitutionality of the BBI steering committee, as well as the constitution of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission IEBC.
Wangeruhusu wa Kenya zaidi ya milioni 45 watoe uamuzi wao bila wao kusema wao ndio wanasema ati hii haifai. Wakisema kwamba IEBC haiko sawa, nataka kuuliza zile elections ambazo zimefanywa juzi, kwa nini wakakubali waendelee? Kwa hivyo wakienda kutoa maamuzi yao waache kuegemea upande huyu ama ule mwingine.
However, according to members of County Assembly drawn from the 47 counties, the BBI bill had been subjected to a thorough public participation exercise in which more than 4 million Kenyans endorsed the bill, claiming that the ruling was judicial activism.
This then begs the question, at what point do we draw the line between what Wajackoyah wants and what a dangerously conservative and self-preserving judiciary wants.
The High Court ruling, however, did not come as a surprise to the BBI proponents.
As a matter of law, and this is where I disagree with my chairman, a constitutional amendment can be unconstitutional in two ways. It can be unconstitutional if it does not follow the process that is already in the current constitution before it's amended. Or it can be unconstitutional because it results in something that does not accord with constitutionalism.
Wabunge walikuwa naongea wakisema document iko na dosari huko ndani, lakini bado wengine wakaendelea kupiga yes, kuonesha walikuwa na pitisha bill ambayo ilikuwa na makosa.
But according to President Kenyatta's allies, the president's bitter past with the judiciary could have influenced the High Court decision. Murang'a County MP Sabina Chege alluding to Kenyatta's failure to appoint 41 judges.
Tunajua labda wengine wao walikuwa katika ile list ambayo president hakuapprove. Hii sio wakati ya kusettle scores. Hii sio wakati ya kuonyeshana hata mimi sasa niko na nguvu.
Meru Governor Kiraitu Murungi claims that the High Court lost focus on the BBI's big picture, saying, and I quote, "We need to address our perennial cycles of electoral violence," end of quote. A section of MCAs have also warned that the judiciary executive stalemate could cause political uncertainty ahead of next year's general election.
2017 is not the first time we experienced political violence in Kenya, and predictably may not be the last if all Kenyans, and the judiciary in particular, do not complement the national executive and parliament in bringing sustainable peace and unity in the country.
Deputy President William Ruto's allies, who have been vocal in opposing the BBI bill from the onset, have asked President Kenyatta to resume his Big Four agenda, blaming the confusion within the ruling Jubilee Party on his BBI core principal Raila Odinga.
Mtu asikundanganye chama. Mtu asikwambie chama kuna chama ya serikali. Vile viti tulikuwa wale watu tuliweka hiyo serikali yote ilichukuliwa na watu wa ODM.
Kwa hivyo tungetaka kuuliza serikali yetu tukufu turudi kwa ile mambo yetu ya Big Four, mambo ya kufufua uchumi. Ndio ile muda umebaki wa serikali ya Jubilee, mwezi 13, mwezi 14, tujaribu kuweka pesa kwa mfuko ya wananchi.
Attorney General Kihara Kariuki has also received his fair share of criticism. A section of politicians across the political divide questioning Kariuki's legal prowess in advising Kenyatta. The government having lost landmark cases including the appointment of the 41 judges and the legality of the position of the chief administrative secretary. It is now a matter of time whether or not the government's appeal will go through or not.
Still on the same, the ruling by the High Court terming BBI process unconstitutional has elicited mixed reactions across the political divide. Here is Laban Lekishon with that report.
After the 5-bench of the High Court ruling on the BBI process that declared it illegal, null and void on Thursday, a section of leaders and the clergy have continued to express illicit reactions. Kitui East Member of Parliament Nimrod Mbai has scoffed opposition chief Raila Odinga for exposing Kenyans to an unnecessary and illegal law reforms, saying they are geared towards selfish political gains. Speaking at Mavoko in Machakos County on Sunday morning, the Jubilee lawmaker claimed that Raila Odinga dragged President Uhuru Kenyatta into an illegal process.
It's very clear Raila hana numbers ya kushinda from all this time. Na amelete furugu kwa sababu wafuasi wake wanaamini ako na numbers. So shida yetu kubwa katika hii kupigana baada ya uchaguzi si katiba. Jambo la kwanza ni ya economy, na jambo la pili ni Raila Odinga kukataa kushindwa. Kwa sababu Raila angekubali kushindwa, hatungekuwa na viti.
Bumula MP Mwambu Mabonga says that President Kenyatta should lead in respecting the court's ruling, saying that the ruling has the public applaud, going by the social media reactions.
Gotv imefanya uamuzi, tukae chini. It's an opportunity for us as leaders to reflect why Kenyans today, when you go on social media, they are celebrating all over. We need to ask ourselves what is wrong, so that we know that whatever we are doing, the common mwananchi is involved.
And from Narok County, MPs allied to Deputy President William Ruto have welcomed the court's ruling with a call to the respect of the rule of law.
Wanatarajia bado BBI itaamuka, poleni, imekufa. Hata upeleke hospitali gani, Kenyatta haitaweza kufufua, Nairobi haitaweza.
Whether BBI iko mochari ama iko ICU, that one I don't know. Mimi siwezi sema.
And we just want to say ya kwamba intimidation of institution isifanywe. Let's move to the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court, kwa sababu sisi tutasikizwa.
But proponents of the process have insisted that there is no cause for alarm to the ruling, with NC Party leader Musalia Mudavadi and Cabinet Secretaries Peter Munya and Mutahi Kagwe asking Parliament to move fast and rescue the Building Bridges initiative through a process akin to inter-party political group initiative.
Constitution came, and that is why for me, I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever that by this time next year or by the end of this year, we will have a new or an amended constitution.
Na tutafuata sheria kuenda hiyo appeal. Lakini tunaona hiyo judgment kama iko na motivation nyingine beyond the law.
When the court process starts, you don't know how long it might take. So should we be hamstrung? Should we be hamstrung and just wait for one process? Or can we start talking?
Section of the clergy have also called on Kenyans to maintain peace at these BBI political tantrums, while some speaking in favor of the ruling. African Independent Church Diocese of Embu leaders says that the ruling by the High Court is worth what Kenyans deserve.
Kanisa na Wakristo kwa jumla na wananchi wa Kenya, ni vizuri tuwe na amani na tuweza kuelewa ni nini hii,
na ni vizuri kwa maana wamedhibitisha ukweli ile ambayo ilikuweko, na kwa hivyo sisi hatuna pingamizi kwa maana mpaka makoti yaheshimiwe, kwa maana kama koti imefanya ruling, imefanya judgment yake, tunafaa kuheshimu.
The Attorney General Kihara Kariuki has already filed a notice of motion to appeal the decision. Lekishon Laban, TV47.
Well, the last stories, the two stories that is, they form the basis of our conversation this morning, as earlier mentioned, alongside Professor George Wajackoyah, Professor Edward Kisiang'ani, and legal expert Kibe Mungai. We already have Professor Wajackoyah in studio. Seems like, you know, an early bird, which is indeed what is expected. The other guests are on their way here. We hope that, of course, they get here in time so that at least we can expound some more on this conversation. Aside from that, there is still so much that is of interest or of public interest, and therefore we do not run away from having this conversation. Good to have you, Professor. Thank you so much for creating time.
Thank you.
Renowned, of course, legal expert, and therefore I know there's so much that we have to pick, or we will pick, especially at this point where there's that process of appeal on what it is that the High Court ruled on. Whether the chances of this appeal sailing through are there is something that, of course, we'd look at and say is a question of wait and see. But yes, having legal experts on board, then we have that opportunity of reading in between the lines and also just reading in the message, you know, the untold messages. Sometimes a message is crafted, but then again, you're advised to look into the inner meaning of the same. And that's exactly what we do this morning. But not before we look at the papers. Professor, allow me to take you through this process. I know you probably have gone through a long time without going through the reviews of the papers. But it's only fair that in as much as we talk politics, we also do not fail to address the crucial issues that bedevil us or are happening in the country. I know we have had complaints a couple of times that most of the times the front pages of the papers speak negative, but there are instances where there's positivity. And so let's look at what the papers detail. The Standard newspaper, we should be having the hard copies any moment from now. The judges have the right to annoy and be accountable. That we'll be looking at as we look into the progress of the conversation. And also this ruling, and generally the BBI, is something that is expected to probably cause lots of realignments, on matters 2022. And now the DP, Deputy President William Ruto, seeks to storm Nyanza region, what one would consider as a stronghold for Baba. Any chances for him there?
Well, there's a lot of myopic behavior by the newspapers.
Yeah.
Why do you have to give such a headline? Plans to storm. Storm what?
Okay.
That's not good news. That's not news to people of Nyanza. But that's news to the DP and his Tangatanga team. In the UK, US, you'll not get that gutter kind of headline.
Right.
Storms. Storms? Really? That's a language
storm raid.
It's pathetic. Literally speaking, it has no value.
What would they have rather said?
Probably it also depends on the reporter who could have.
And also the information that came from the ground, or maybe from this side.
But as you know, this country, the newspapers are actually privately owned. It's a private enterprise. And because of supersonic regulations, we are yet to come to terms with the tabloids mentality, whereby as we grow maturely in terms of processing information to be given to the public, then probably we shall arrive at a stage whereby such kind of headlines will not hold any kind of impeding justice.
Let's overlook the words, Prof, for a moment, and maybe just look at the possibility of him, traversing these sides of Nyanza and, just to get to win something, that comes to his side. Remember, it appeared as though it would be very hard for him to be able to traverse the likes of Mount Kenya and, gain some numbers. But in the recent past, we've seen how much he's been a darling somehow, or at least what it is that is purported to the people of Mount Kenya. What are the chances of him also, getting that chance of being a darling to the people of Nyanza?
The issue of darling is a language that I do not want to hear.
Okay.
Secondly, Ruto is a Kenyan and has a right to traverse the region in any way he wants. Thirdly, the motivation that impedes him to go to where he wants is only known to him. But in terms of politics, in terms of economics, what we need to look at is the policies behind the wheels. Let's look at the history of this man, and let's look at him from the time when he used to sell chicken, like I was a street kid in this town. And let's look at the progressing kind of ladder going to where he is at the moment. What has he done?
His promises, the Rutonomics angle that
how many promises have we had? Not only from Ruto,
them we have,
not only from Ruto, from Kenyatta, from Raila, and every kind of politician that comes. You promise air. At the end of the day, if you did that in a developed country, you'll be held to be accountable for your own words, because if they are misleading and causing misrepresentation for people to rely on them, then there is an issue here. So you don't just come and reform yourself into and regurgitate into garbage so that you keep on recycling the same garbage, information, processing information that has no value, no value addition. Then what do we do?
Well, he goes around, picks more knowledge and wisdom in, different approaches, and it's okay. He could have gotten it wrong from the word go, but maybe what it is that he brings next is something that we can bank on, something that we can count on. Do we just wish away that?
We cannot wish away anything from anybody, including myself and yourself. Everybody has got some kind of value addition to society, but it depends on the segment of society and the people who follow you and the people who benefit from your value addition. Definitely everyone has got his own bad side of him, but I'm not blaming Ruto on the headline, but I'm blaming the media for having come up with some kind of pathetic knowledge headline or sub-headlines that they ought now to go out of, because we are in a new mode of scientific evolution, in terms of scientific data collection, in terms of what has been there consistently, which they ought to turn around and get out of that, because now we have social wisdom and social literature and social kind of connections. People connect on the dots. People know what it is, and they can always come out and bisect that.
All right, well, we leave it at that. I'd want to play the devil's advocate because I'm one of the media fraternity, and therefore I'd say, sometimes we report it as it has been told. And we leave it at that. Look at some of the key stories. I'll pick on about two also. Brace for COVID-19 cases spike in July. That is also a story that has been captured on the front page of the Daily Nation. Experts fault fluctuation Experts fault COVID strategy, fluctuation in positivity rate, misleading, warns Medic. I mean, I do not want us to go back to just understanding how we've dealt with COVID-19, but generally, what would be your reservation in regards to how we've handled the health sector as it is? Because if there's something that now, of course, makes or paints a terrible picture of what the Jubilee government has become, is definitely how they have handled matters health. It appears that it's not as to the expectation of Kenyans.
How did Trump handle COVID?
They say it is terrible, that's why he lost the election.
How did the Prime Minister of Britain handle COVID when it came?
Yeah.
How did the Chinese handle it? And how did India, or how is India handling it? So the issue of blame game does not arise, because this is something that had not been scientifically awaited for. There was no research before, prior research actually, to allow data collection to reach out at a conclusion that in future we're likely to have this kind of mobile disease such as this. Therefore, it came in an awareness, and we cannot now come in and start blaming Jubilee government for having actually been unprepared. Disaster management is another thing altogether, but management of something that you do not know, that comes through the window. I mean, how do you now come up and saying that, oh, they have not managed well? What have you? Maybe on the funds, yes, because we are told there are also issues to do with the bidding for the funds. Of course, you know, Kenya is a land of thieves, and we cannot just blame one sector. Every leader has got a hand dipping in the purse of taxpayers, and that's not news to us, because biblically speaking, you'll find out that even in the Bible, there's a son of the children of a high priest dipped their hands into the offering. And that's not news to Kenyans. Kenyans are people who are used to. The majority of Kenyans, and those who are learned like myself, those who have the brain to change and traverse the world. So when issues of monies came in and they handled the money, that was also not news to us.
All right. Okay. Well, unfortunately, the Jubilee government is not off the hook, because, well, reality is that this is not just a fear of COVID-19, but generally the health sector at large. And as you have rightfully mentioned, how these different countries handle the same. The likes of Trump lost their seat, courtesy of how they handled COVID-19. And you could hear Americans say that they are not satisfied in his handling, and therefore would probably not award him a second term, or, just another phase of presidency. But we drop that one, and we look at matters education. Generally also matters education, health, pretty much crucial. Parents scramble for Form 1 slots in top schools, and also some adjustments in terms of, the biometric processes have been incorporated in, the education sector. That is to help guard on the aspect of cheating, and just making sure that these processes are streamlined as captured on the different papers. Also on the People Daily, TSC kicks off collection of teachers' biometric data. Commission board says exercise to be piloted in 143 schools would improve service delivery. Just how instrumental is this in transforming the education sector, and what would you make of the sector itself as it stands today amid all these controversies, discrepancies, and this trying to stay afloat, especially after COVID-19?
Education system in this country has been messed up from independence to the second president, not the first president. The first president did well because our schools were excelling and we were just on top of everything.
Okay.
And then from this issue of 844 that came in, and then whatever has happened, people ought to have looked elsewhere to find out whether education is a mandatory issue or a privilege. In the US, education is a privilege.
Okay.
It's up to the parents or the guardians to choose the method of the way forward of how they want to transform their children into education. But here they made it mandatory. They made it mandatory without putting infrastructure altogether, and that's why you see a lot of problems coming in. And there was no programmative kind of research that has been carried on. Every time regimes come up with different kind of ideological frameworks for education, but nobody has told us that this is what we have been doing over the last 20 years. We have been, we have scientifically put our experts in the field. They have been collecting data. They have been researching.
Right.
There is also a peer review kind of academics that is actually inclusive of parents and those who are involved with the children, plus the children themselves, including other stakeholders like teachers and those who actually play a big role in infrastructure, to find out what kind of framework, what kind of academic system or education system we want. That's why you see there's a lot of unemployment and a lot of students who have been progressed and processed towards the white-collar jobs.
Right.
But if you go to countries like Japan, you go to countries, the Southeast Asian countries like Singapore, the value of education depends on technicality of each and every child. You wake up in the morning, if you're a child, and you're indoctrinated towards success in entrepreneurship. I want to be a business person. I want to be development oriented. I want to be like this, and I want to build a house like that. So they start with toys. But here, go to school, have pens, have my friends like my academic friends here, Wakili here, are very affluent. A man I love so much because I read this, I read him a lot. He may not have known me, and I've just met him today. People like these ones are the people we need to come up and sit down and say, look, let us have an academic framework. Look at political parties. If you go into the political parties, political parties themselves, where is their mentality in terms of education in their manifesto? Zero.
In fact, their complaints that they're being forced to have degrees before they take up the seats. And
I have too many degrees, but I'm doing nothing. A lot of my degrees are like a waste. But if somebody had technically taken me into a technical field, like a pilot, or let me say a mechanic, I would actually be much more valuable.
Productive. Isn't it what we are adopting with the competency-based curriculum? When they speak of, making sure that we have skills instilled, proper skills for that matter, and are we likely to be successful?
But who are those people who are advising on skills? Look at their academic background. Do they have those skills themselves?
They don't. But there's always a beginning. We have to start somewhere.
50 years? Look at India, which became independent in 1947 after Bretton Woods institutions were initiated. Look at what the kind of system they took, and just cross to Tanzania. Look at how productive Tanzanians are in terms of infrastructure and development. Look at them in terms of corruption and compare Tanzania to Kenya, where we have more learned people in East Africa. So it's just kind of vitiated mentality. Because we are frameworked in terms of dressing like this, we have to do things this way, we have our children to look like us. No, that's why I forced my own son to go and do mechanics in UK. And then after that, I also asked him to do something for the family. So anytime my son came back home, looking very frugal, I said, this one is my son. Now, later on, he became a water engineer, and all the time he stays in water, and he comes out that way. But had I taken him toward that methodology, which makes people in this country, which makes people who have gone to higher education to believe that they know it all, then primitivity comes in.
Well, that's interesting. You don't want us to pride in the kind of education background that you also have, the numerous papers, the degrees.
What is education without value? How do you have so much education and you're stupid? You can't utilize that education towards the people who may benefit from you. Why? That's why you see most of us who are so learned are the people who are letting this country down, because when it comes to, and I'm sure my learned friend will poke in me this, when it comes to framing the Constitution, for example, they go for those who have degrees and PhDs and what have you. Their work is copy, paste. That's the best for them. Don't you involve the stakeholders down the ground, the way India has done, the way Bangladesh and Pakistan has done, the way Singapore has come up. Thank you.
All right. Well, Wakili, I think it's only fair that we loop you in now that you are here. Wakili Kibe Mungai is with us this morning. I've also seen Professor Edward Kisiang'ani on standby, and we'll also loop in as we continue with the broadcast. Thank you for finding time. And yes, on that aspect of matters education, I want to believe that there's so much pride that comes along with so much paperwork and all that. But Professor here argues otherwise. Do you suppose then we are taking a proper trajectory when we're taking the competency-based curriculum, and are there chances that we are likely to succeed on this, looking at his argument that maybe we're coming in a little bit too late?
Actually, I must say that in many ways, I've been confused a little bit on Kenya's education programs. I joined, I was in the 844 system, the second one.
Yes.
And I remember I had to be forced to be a defender of the 844 system, because those people who are in the previous system somehow believed that even the system was condemned, just as we were getting into it. And I remember some time back I had to retort. I presume that those of us are likely to succeed in the 844 system would still have succeeded even if the other system had not been abolished.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then we went, now we are the education system, now I have children, a few have gone through the 844 system, a few others will have to go through the competence-based curriculum. Now, for the best of me, for example, the idea that the competence-based curriculum, it's a good idea. I hope it would have a realistic way, I'm yet to understand it, how you are going to see this is the proper line for this set of children, and this is the proper line for this set of children.
Right.
On a theoretical premise, I seem to understand it, and it may be a good thing. But 844 system was also said to be a good thing.
Right.
The test really came during the time of implementation. So for me, probably the most I can do as of now and hope as a parent is that, for heaven's sake, let the system work. For a simple reason, if as a country we are ambitious and we need to get somewhere, nowadays there is a shortcut to how countries can really develop themselves.
Okay.
The whole idea about the STEM, the science, mathematics, and technology, is the fact that to prepare your children to be able to be fast rate in the world, there's an objective test in the science world and in mathematics. So that, and India and some countries in Asia have been able to get their people in the Silicon Valley and elsewhere on merit, because it is for in mathematics, it's either you know it or you don't know it. Okay. So that my idea, and I had a lot of bias despite being a lawyer for mathematics and science, the idea in my view that how do we train? Is this system, the competence-based curriculum, CBC,
yes.
Will it guarantee that at the end of the day, Kenya can have first-rate physicians, first-rate scientists, and people who know mathematics? If it can, I think that would be a very good thing for Kenya.
We can only
now, whether or not it will, God knows.
It's a question of wait and see. You know, I'm looking at this paper, and for a moment I see the face of Lady Justice Martha Koome. I remember watching Professor Wajackoyah, you know, speak highly of her and pride, you know, in the appointment of her. I'd want to imagine that this is based on the education credentials. Well, I'll come back and we briefly touch on the appointment of the, you know, CJ, and then we expound some more into other, you know, stories that have been captured and generally the conversation of the day that is in regards to matters BBI. But first, let's take a short break.
Raukia siku njema na tunukiwa offers kila siku. Pata offers zote mahali pamoja ili uongeze zaidi, utume SMS zaidi na ubrowse zaidi.
Wewe usijali. Tuma namba ya kila supplier kwa hiyo soko. Nitajoble nitaongea na kila mmoja wao.
Very good. Piga *444# utunukiwe Credo double.
Raukia siku njema na tunukiwa offers kila siku.
what you're thinking. It's a cup of coffee. Coffee, movie. Together, coffee with movie. Every Sunday, 8 p.m. on TV 47, where we bring you interesting, enticing people. Well, we've concentrated on musicians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Producers.
So now I manage, because talent management and events management, I think was my passion.
Right about now, we want to go beyond to the counties and to other countries. Out here, let the sun stand still like Joshua time for 3 hours, but this time for only 1 hour. We bring you coffee with movie, interesting, enticing guests. Out here, tunaweza anza tuna Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, twende Uganda, Magufuli Land, TZ, you never know. It is coffee with movie. Jua unaweza enda sasa.
Okay,
Before the markets open, farmers begin their day, each with the desire to produce the best. But how can they increase the numbers, maintain the standards,
Aitoi ile garlic inafaa itoi, that standard garlic.
reduce the cost,
we spread our risk,
and yet
Welcome back to the broadcast, and still with me, Professor George Wajackoyah and lawyer Kibe Mungai, and of course now officially we introduce Professor Edward Kisiang'ani, who joins us this morning for the crucial conversation that has taken center stage in the country right now, likely to take us through so much, and in regards to different experiences, and this at a time when we're staring at a national election that is slated for 2022. Of course, this ruling and generally the conversation on the constitutional amendment is hugely going to, alter or maybe have some differences cropping in regards to how we conduct the 2022 elections. And therefore, it's only fair that we have this conversation. This at a point also where the Jubilee Party, and not just the Jubilee Party, actually the proponents of the BBI seek to appeal this. The process already has been spearheaded by the Attorney General. Just what are the likelihoods that this appeal is going to sail through? A question of wait and see. We ponder on that this particular morning. But before we get to that, it's important that we wind up on these stories of the papers. We've picked on about 2-3. Let's pick 2 more and we close it at that. And from the point that I left, Kome to no fate of CJ position. Probably just to loop you in, Professor Edward Kisiang'ani, in regards to this. I know it's a process that has been ongoing, but also comes at a time when it's evident that there's a rift between the arms of government, that is the executive and the judiciary. What do you make of these appointments? Lots of course, reservations from different quarters in regards to the individual, that is Lady Justice Martha Koome. But then again, this process has to move on, and how instrumental then it would be in regards to one, of course, the process of the BBI, if at all we are going to continue with reggae, and equally the elections.
I think thanks a lot, Linda, and my colleagues here. I think, to be fair, she has the basic qualifications, although there could have been better people, but at basic level, she has a law degree, which is a requirement. I think before we question whether or not she should be the right person, we must also look at the advert, which asked for applications. In my opinion, we need to change that advert in future, so that we have people with first-class honors and upper second, and maybe upper second-class honors as the minimum requirement, so that the applicants know when to apply and not to apply, because we have a lot of top-class people in our republic who need to get jobs. But when you just put there a blanket advert, asking for people to apply so long as they have a university degree, sometimes you can disadvantage those who have the highest qualifications. So, but for her, she has that basic requirement. Now, when it comes to there are people who have a perception that she's a pro-establishment person. I think for me, apart from the incident where she was summoned to do certain things in the late hours, around the 2017 elections, which probably is not a good sign. There are no other things that I can say really President has a pro-established place.
Yeah.
But I think she has had enough experience in the judiciary that being pro-establishment for the sake of being a pro-establishment is not a good thing. If elections are held and they are not fair and free according to the Constitution, she should be brave enough to give direction and say this is wrong.
Right.
But if she also realizes that the elections are fair, she should also pronounce herself on that way. So we are expecting some kind of professional guidance from her because she represents the Republic. Now, with regard to her vetting, I think the biggest concern in our Republic today is that Parliament does not seem to play its role. We have seen cases where Parliament has tried to vet people, and you could see that they are working at the behest of somebody else, being directed to vet people who later turn out not to be good people for in terms of performing their duties. So integrity issues are always raised after people have gone through the vetting. Yeah. So I think at this hour, our main concern is not Martha Koome. Our concern is whether Parliament has the capacity and the bravery to vet public officers and give us the best.
That's true.
They do not seem to play that role, and they falter when it matters most, like they have faltered over the Constitution. So that's the biggest worry. But I suspect her vetting will go through, and she's likely to be appointed our next CJ. Now, instead of us work, because the train has left the station, instead of us thinking so much about how she will be vetted, how she will qualify how she will perform her duties, I think we can give her a chance to perform her duties, and we see whether she will prove us right or wrong. I think at the time Chief Justice Maraga was appointed, similar things were raised, right. But I think he met our expectations, and we feel good. So she needs a chance like another Kenyan.
And of course, the exit of Maraga,
yes,
leaving behind quite a hard task for the person who's going to be the next Chief Justice. We certainly await to see how then she gets to handle this.
And what you really need to tell her and us as we wait for her to be confirmed, is that it is very simple. Her job will be very simple.
Is it so?
Yes, it's very simple. Unless she wants to complicate it, let her follow the Constitution. In everything she does, let her carry the Constitution in her hand. The job is simple.
Constitutionalism is one thing that is a problem. Professor, before Wakili you come in, let's allow Professor say something on this one. And I mean, it's still on the aspect of education. Professor Edward Kisiang'ani, before you came in, we just had this conversation in regards to the quality of education that we have today. Professor speaks of a scenario where we would allow people who have first-class honors and all that. Boils down to the aspect of education. We really cannot rule away that.
First of all, I'm very privileged to sit with these two great men. I read a lot about him. Even yesterday, I read so much about what he wrote in the Standard. And with the Professor Kisiang'ani, I followed him. You should know you have a follower. I have followed him dot to dot. In the US, UK.
Yes.
I'm privileged to sit with this man from Luyala.
Yes.
Now, when we come to what he has said, I respect the opinion, even though I differ to some level. But when it comes to this woman who was my alumni, University of London, almost the same age group, and at that time when she went to the University of London, there were very few women who are doing their masters. And of course, the University of London is top of the age. You talk of universities, I've gone to 9 universities, but among the top universities that I still like best is the University of London. University of London has got different colleges, but the one who went has produced her, and has produced the Chief Justice of Ghana, who is a woman. Now, if you look at the quotient of qualifications and classes, then Ngugi wa Thiong'o should not be where he is today, because he got third-class honors. Professor Wole Soyinka did not even get upper second class. But they turned out to be the best brains we have. Now, if you look at Mahatma Gandhi, he never even got first class. I never got first class, my friend.
I also didn't.
Now let's get to know the secrets here. Professor, what did you?
Yes,
All
but
right.
it's a colonial notion. Colonial notion where, and that's what we were discussing before, where it said that if you don't go to Kamsinga, you don't go to Mumias Boys, you are nothing. And that brag mentality is what came into Nairobi University, whereby those who came to Nairobi University in them old days, I had the privilege to attest to the fact that someone from Kenyatta University was inferior.
Right.
Because by then Kenyatta University was offering a diploma. Only to realize that we cannot be the same. The fingers cannot be the same, though they are functionalism fingers. Because if you chop off one, the rest will not work. The issue of academic qualification in this new era, and which is very conservative, I think we should run away from it.
Okay.
If we were to go that way, then I, who performed very poorly at all levels, will not be who I am, having not woken up and worked very hard from being a chokora to a grave digger to a security guard to washing white people in bed and washing dead bodies in mortuaries, with an illusion that I never got first class, I never got second upper class. But I want to be like John Major, the Prime Minister of London, England, who never went beyond standard 8. He was a bus conductor, but he did his methodologies through accounting until he became a member of the Conservative Party. Then he became the chair of the Conservative Party in the place where he was coming from. Then from there he rose up within the ranks of conservatism to become the best chancellor of Exchequer in UK, where monies were not an issue.
Professor,
so
but then
me,
we agree that it is only fair that the few who've managed to go to the top ranks in matters education, it's important that they are appreciated. It's important
we appreciate them, but
that they get this position.
The question is very simple. If everybody was getting first class honors,
then where? Okay.
I think, Linda,
right, before
we are not vilifying those who don't get first class honors on the upper second. That is, we miss the point. I think what we're saying is that every time you go to see your kid in high school, maybe there's a parents' day or something, you tell your kid to work very hard and get top marks.
Yes, you do.
Now, when that kid expects that the society will also appreciate them when time comes. Now, when you tell your kids, get the highest marks, work hard, get A, go to university, do well, then they realize jobs are being given to people who did not measure up to where they are. It is a discouragement. So next time you go to a parent's day to your kid, what are you going to say? To tell them to work hard, but they might remind you, Mom, working hard is not an issue, because we have fellows like Ngugi Wathiongo who didn't do it, but they are like this. So I'm waiting to be like Ngugi Wathiongo. Is that going to be an exception or a rule? So we need to think about it. We are not vilifying. We have very distinguished people who have gone through, because exams can really be misleading. But we need also to respect the fact that our country thrives on knowledge, and we reward knowledge. If we don't reward knowledge, we are likely to push back the clock and then tell people, even if you don't make it, you are okay. We shall still get a chance for you. So I appreciate. And I've no problem with CJ Kome. I would like her to let us judge her by what she will do, especially during the next general election.
Wakili, this is your space.
Precisely. But before I say something about Justice Kome, all these thing of education, first class, whatever other grade that ones get, sometimes we miss to lose a fundamental point. The fundamental point being that the high school you go to, for example, I was reading the article of my friend Mugambi Kiai. He was 1 year ahead of me at Nairobi University law campus. Now, there's been these obsessions with Alliance. Did you go to Alliance? Which high school did you go to? I've always cautioned that it is important to know there used to be a time when about 1,000 or 2,000 people could sit for an exam which would decide the 200 who would go to Alliance. During those days, I think it meant something if at the end of the day you went to Alliance. But during the times when you have 500,000 people sitting for exams and only 300 can go to Alliance, the issue of who went there or what should be seen in the context of the fact that at the end of the day, so many bright people are never going to go to alliance or these top schools in the first place. So you need more alliances. That's the main point. But it is also important that I point out that alliance has been a nice place. It's produced Ngugi wa Thiong'o, whom I respect a lot. A lot of our early leaders like Kenneth Matiba were also from Alliance. Amos Wako was also from there. So it's a place that it is part of the history of Kenya. My own uncle, the late Henry Kuria, also went to Alliance. But for me, the most significant achievement of Henry Kuria is, as Ngugi wa Thiong'o said in one of his books, that he was the first man who wrote a book in Kiswahili called Nakupenda Lakini. I don't know whether, Professor, you know that book. Yes. So for me, even what we treasure more about him is the fact that what did this man who went to this great school achieve? At 14 or at 18, you can't achieve anything. Professor Wajackoyah and my other professor here, Kisiang'ani, will be told, did you achieve anything or not? The achievement is usually at the age between 30 and 60. During this period, what did you achieve? That means it is a period after you have left school that marks your real achievement. I don't think I need to say anything else, so that if you live in the past glory, that at 14 years I went to Alliance, you may never achieve anything else. There is always, it carries that danger. And it is not something much to brag about. Because you are still expected to be this or the other. Who is one of the best lawyers? Some of the best lawyers we can say, James Orengo, George Oraro. What did they score? They may not have scored what other people scored first class. But yet when you ask neutral Kenyans, give us 10 lawyers. You may have 10 where there is no first or second class.
Right. And
let me finally say something about Judge Kome.
Yes.
Judge Kome, and I think I wrote something about that probably in the Standard, and the People. It appeared both places. This is one of those lawyers for me. My main qualifications for her is based on value, because a formal qualification everybody can have it, but the fact that we have a constitution that contains a lot of values that she has been associated with in the past: democracy, human rights, and all these. She's been given an important job to ensure, be the guardian of this constitution, implement the next phase of the constitution. I wish her well if she's confirmed. Unlike Professor Kisiang'ani, I don't think that her judgment would be easy, her tenure would be easy, particularly in the light of the BBI judgment and all these things that have happened, for two simple reasons. Number one is that she comes into office at a time that already the Supreme Court and the higher courts are already involved in a big discussion. In constitutional adjudication, ultimately is about law and politics. Okay, what choices does she make? Would she be condemned for whatever choice that she makes in advance, or she will be given her choice? Will she make good choices that respects the constitution as he says? That will not be an easy job. Number two, we are going to have the Kenyatta succession soon. The next election has very high chances of being the most contentious from a legal point of view. And she'll be in the middle of that storm. How is she going to navigate the storm? So I wish her well. She'll not have an easy job, and she'll be a CJ in times that are far from easy. But I wish her well.
All right, gentlemen, let's get to the contemptuous ruling by these 5 High Court judges that blocked a government's-backed plan to make fundamental changes into the country's constitution. And we speak of the conversation on matters BBI. And on this particular story, as we close the papers, I'd want us to equate this conversation to the conversation of by-elections. The court speaks of a scenario where one of the key things that made them quash this move, or to halt reggae tunes for a moment, the fact that the IEBC was not well constituted to even verify the signatures that sailed through the conversation on matters BBI. If such is the scenario, if we are to look at that, we would would we equate the same to the conversation on by-elections? Because it's the very same IEBC as constituted that has overseen the processes of by-elections, that is set to oversee the process of a by-election in Bonchari in Juja constituency. Would this argument be here or there?
Let me quickly say, because before the lawyers come,
yes,
I think people didn't
quite get that.
They didn't get it. You remember when Judge, I think Justice Ngugi was reading.
Yes.
He differentiated between matters of policy,
yes,
and you know, just performing duties. And he says that in terms of policy matters, there are certain policy matters which can be done, which cannot be done without a complete the stipulated number of commissioners.
Okay.
So I don't see anywhere in that ruling that the IEBC was told you can't conduct
verification process.
Not
the by-elections. Yes.
But with regard to verification, they raised quite a number of things, and the people are focusing on the lesser imposing ones.
Yeah.
The one thing that they raised was, is there any structure for verification? And that is the one that they raised. When you take signatures, you verify signatures, you must verify it against approved ones.
Yes.
Like in the bank, there must be a bank of signatures. Now that only comes if we had a referendum law. Because if we have a referendum law, it will speak to the issue of signatures and say, at the stage of verification, as one of the main items in the referendum, this is what you will be checking for. And this will be, you must have a depository of signatures of, or maybe electronic, of all the voters. And then when they sign physically, you can check them against the ones you have in your custody. So there is no direction. And so they say there is no guideline upon which they can do the verification.
All right.
And so the question that the judges seem to be asking is, how can you participate in something that has no guideline and say, and pretend to be verifying? And so it was the argument of the judges that both Parliament and IEBC should already have worked on this and come out without, guidelines on how to do the verification. That is more critical than just saying, they can't do ABCD, but there are serious structural problems which hindered the performance of the IEBC, which they talked about, but they never stopped the IEBC from conducting general
the by-elections. All right, before we come to the move by the Attorney General to appeal on this ruling, it is only fair that we also get, just a recap and a backup of technically what you make of the ruling, the Thursday ruling that really, I don't know whether it was expected by many and especially the proponents. It's, got them flat-footed in a way.
Thank you very much, and I quite agree with what Professor Kisiang'ani has said. But let me make it very clear, and this is, and with what I read from you, please don't. The court's ruling on IEBC is unconstitutional. That case will be thrown out from the High Court, from the Court.
The chances are there, you think?
No. They are going to throw it out, and this is why.
Okay.
Number one, if you look at Article 248 of the Constitution, on the composition of commissions, the language is very clear. They talk of 9, 7, and 5. But if you go a step further and look at Article 250 of the Constitution, it talks of 7, 5, and 3. It, the same article qualifies. It qualifies that the commission is duly constituted when there are 3 commissioners. And if you look at cases that have come before the courts, Justice Okwanyi, in the Kibe case, he made it very clear that 3 is the quorum. And if you look at Justice Chacha, who was sitting in the High Court with our learned friend Justice Ngugi, I do not know what went on, whether God wanted to use the devil to kill another devil, or whether the enemy was about to attack and then God used the devil to kill that enemy. I do not know why a very able scholar from Harvard University, Justice Ngugi was looking at. Do they have proper research? Just research on simplicity? Chacha was sitting there when these pronouncements were being made. He ought to have said, hey, wait a minute. Of course, judges write their pronunciations of their own to come in with affirming or not affirming decision. But he could not have agreed with that. So the whole group have to blame. And secondly, the IEBC chair, as well as the IBC, have written rules and have sent those rules to Parliament. As to what my brother here said, on the guiding process, Parliament has slept on them.
Okay.
And if you read every pronouncement made by the court where IBC is concerned, the chair of the IBC, Mr. Chebukati, and his group have always defended themselves and they have always won the day. So the problem is, why come up with such kind of lubricated judgment, oiled at bias, concocted with illegality, procedural impropriety, not even looking at the case law? That case is dead on arrival, because where there is any element of bias in any kind of matters that are being debated in court, any element, however small it is, it renders the whole thing back. But
you pinpointed
finally,
all right.
I would like to say that those judges are some of the best, especially and particularly Justice Ngugi, we love him, and Odunga. But then when we come also to the physiology of judicial contempt in terms of green light passage of judges and red light passage of judges, and dealing with matters constituent, not legislative, constituent in changing or amending the Constitution. When it comes to amending the Constitution, there's a case of Virginia, of Mr. Hollingworth in the US, which said that the president ought not to append his signature. And if you look at the preamble in this country, and you look at the legislative process, and I'm sure my learned colleague, who is very much good in this area of law, because I do comparative, I don't know what he does. If you look at the blame that comes in of reducing the president, His Excellency the President, to Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, demoting him, when the Court of Appeal president is referred to as the Court of Appeal president,
okay,
when the chairman of Law Society of Kenya is referred to as the president of the Law Society, the biasness element is there. Thank you.
The unconstitutional process that Professor raises, we probably would wish to hear it from a legal mind. In this capacity, then you are the legal mind on set. Did you notice any elements of unconstitutionalism in the ruling, as of course was played out that particular Thursday evening? And I mean, coming as a surprise to many. Equally, pinpointing at how the BBI process itself was unconstitutional.
There are a number of things that one may say about this judgment. And I've already done a preliminary observation. That's for newspaper. I believe sooner or later, I'll be doing either for Nairobi Law Monthly of one of the more academic-oriented magazines, an in-depth critique and appreciations of this particular judgment. But having said that, is that there are a couple, the first general observation I need to make is that we cannot, it would be dishonest for anyone to run away from the fact that the issues that were raised by the judges, more than 50% of them are genuine issues, more than 50% of them. Now, like Professor Wajackoyah, I have an issue with the language that was used by the judges, particularly against the president, and even the finding that the president has breached Chapter 6 of the Constitution. And I also have concern that in constitutional adjudication, since the Constitution bestows some power and some choices to be made by people who happen for the time being to be the politicians that we have elected, there ought to be some sympathy of some kind that the handshake brothers, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, decided that we've been having these difficulties. They are political. We are uniquely placed to try and address these difficulties. This is the manner in which we are going to address them. To me, they appear to have acted on noble motives. They may not have executed the plan properly, from a legal standpoint, but their motives were okay. And some of the things may not be gotten right, but they are also not lawyers.
But what is the wisdom in that?
Yes,
we understand
I'm saying,
that legal experts, surround the president evidently. So
precisely, I was actually coming to that. The issue, therefore, you expected there would be some more empathy of people who made decisions, not necessarily to subvert the constitutions, but to advance public interest. But again, now coming to the issues that you are raising, the president is surrounded by very good lawyers. Again, very people who I expected were working on the best of motives, but it is a question, and lawyers can have this discussion. Was it the best legal advice, for example, that you're executing a massive task of amending the Kenya 10 constitutions, and you are doing that through presidential gazette notices? I have to say, I, for one, had difficulties from the word go, and I expressed them. So it goes back to the questions you are asking. Were you surprised? Was the BBI taken flat-footed? If you are taken by surprise by that decision, and when those court proceedings were going on, it can only express how naive you must have been. The BBI process was not anchored on a proper legal and constitutional foundation.
Professor,
now,
let's allow Professor.
If it was not, I'm just finishing that point.
All right.
If it was not, then you knew that you had a soft underbelly that could be exposed. If you go before what I would say, the right judges or wrong judges, if you got to sympathetic judges, you could survive it. They could gloss over the issues. But if you go to judges now who are taking these issues seriously, whether the foundations were okay, you'd be exposed. And if you are exposed with with the scissors of a surgeon. This is what these judges were doing. So that when they go to such an extent to kill BBI, in many ways you can say, there was also an element of self-inflicted injury. As in, some things that you could have gotten right. What prevented the referendum law from being there? And when you started BBI, there was many people who are saying, why can't we make some act? Even Moi actually did some act to amend the former constitutions of Kenya, isn't it? Those things could have been done, other than just to say, you have presidential gazette notices. What do you know what that choice made? Without those presidential gazette notices, you could not legally connect President Kenyatta to BBI. But he was connected by it because of a choice that was never a good choice in the first place.
Well, picking up from this conversation, you want to come in? Yes. All right, and count. All right.
Yes, I think my brother Kibe has said something very important. But he also raised the question of empathy, that there has to be some little empathy because these people had good intentions. I don't know how to describe people who, first of all, start a process, a BBI process, without taking stock of the level of implementation of the 2010 Constitution and telling us, this is the level, column 1. Column 2, how many of the subsidiary legislations have been made to implement the 2010 Constitution, each of the 18 chapters, and how many of them are unconstitutional and how many are constitutional. So in terms of percentages, that is the starting point for research. Then you present your case for amendment of the Constitution, even if it is a parliamentary process, and even citizens can do that. But these guys didn't do that. They just woke up and say they want to change the Constitution. Then, we say, what do you want to do? What has prevented you from doing your work, Mr. President? These kind of things. They didn't do that. But Linda, what is critical is, they moved ahead and actually personalized this process to revolve around the president and the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, but also weaponized it to be an attack on the Deputy President Ruto. This is what alienated the process and actually dismantled it and removed warmth and a desire for it. Because it looked like if you are supporting William Ruto, you have nothing to do with BBI. A number of us said, you know what, let us remove this from this thing. Let's remove politicians. We're looking at a document that will deal with everybody and will support or protect everybody. They refused. There were chances, many chances available, Bomas 1, Bomas 2, Linda, where people pleaded, let us talk. The president's people didn't accept, Raila's people didn't accept. We knew some of the things that Wakili Kibe is raising could even have been corrected at that time.
But historically, Professor, you also acknowledge that sometimes we cannot have, this document addressing the issues of everyone. And so at some point...
You see, if we had a chance to talk like that, we would even address the issue of the referendum question, which doesn't exist, the talking part. We would even say, how much of the 2020 constitution can we change? What is wrong? Those questions were never answered. Then, there is the big elephant in the room, the issue of 70 constituencies being put in the bill, in a constitutional bill, and then the same bill is allocating the same thing, the 70 constituencies to different places in the country. That actually interferes with the work of the IEBC. So as my brother is putting, the lawyers around the president should have seen these weaknesses, because these are the things that armed the people, a lot of people against this process, and they thought they were trying to push for a particular agenda which was hidden. So in my opinion, how do you then empathize with these people who seemed to be arrogant and they were just doing things reckless? They would never listen. We have friends who are supporting the BBI. They could never listen. They could never even take your point. Anytime you try to say, you know what, let us check this. They say you are Tanga. Let us check this. Then you are Kieleweke. This kind of thing really destroyed the process, and nobody was able to listen to another. So we failed that test. Now, when it comes to my brother Wajackoyah's argument on whether the language used by the judges, the language used by the judges is, in my opinion, is a trivial matter, because it was not part of the pleadings. The way the judges express themselves, really, I will look at the content. But how they present that content, it is a question of style.
Okay.
But if they call President Kenyatta, there are a series of things, and we don't want to pretend about this. There are a series of things that you can cite in our legal system to show that the president has violated the constitution on a number of things, because he has refused to do certain things, including the appointment of judges. So even if the language was a bit rough, why are people rushing to see how bad the language is, but they are not able to see the fact that the head of state also should have played a certain role to make things easy?
Hold it right. Of course, he should not be condemned based on that. But then again, legally and across, we have seen presidents actually appearing even before the ICC. And most of the times, they are addressed as Mr. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so.
I was coming to that.
Okay.
I was just coming to that. I don't know how disrespectful it is to call our president Mr. Kenyatta, because he is the head of state.
Right.
Let me give you an example. In the United States, by the way, people don't even understand that former president of the United States, Obama, has a PhD. But does he use the Dr. Obama? You have never heard about it. Right. Most of us are called by our titles, but we don't like it. Even on my door at the university where I teach, you will just see Edward Kisiang'ani. I don't like these titles. They mean nothing. But so the judges can still call the president Mr. Kenyatta. It is not disrespectful. They can call him the president. It's choice. There is nothing in law which says that when you call the president by the name Mr. Kenyatta, you are violating any law. There is also nothing which forces you to call him Mr. President. The question of being president is a given. It is a constitutional thing. It happened, but you can still call him. You can make choices, but those choices should never be seen as disrespectful. The people who are pursuing that argument are probably trying to cover up the bigger issue. Has the executive in this country implemented the constitution?
Definitely.
No.
No. All right, coming to you, Professor. And the very same individuals. Make it brief so at least we are fair.
Yes. Or just on what he has mentioned.
Right.
I think I agree with Professor Wajackoyah that in a judgment in which you are calling the President of the Law Society of Kenya, my friend Nelson Harvey, by his title, the President of the Court of Appeal by his title, it leaves a lot to be said when the President of Kenya is apparently stripped of his title. Now, I have no problem myself, even so much with the President, that President Kenyatta was reduced to Mr. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta so many times. The bigger problem is that if you saw the tone of the judgment and the language, some of us can note the language that even if this is what you wanted to communicate, and when I raise the issues of empathy, it actually shows the handshake brothers. We may not like them 100%. We all like them or hate them to some percentages, okay? But the handshake brothers can still not be said to be saboteurs, to be people who set out to harm Kenya. But for me, there is an element of projecting them that way. That these were people that came out to hurt this country through this process, and we need to stop them. That's actually my bigger concern.
All right, Professor, and keeping it at that point, do you then sense some level of activism, judicial activism, as has been seen across Africa, judicial coup as has been seen across Africa, and we all understand the stages of, when the arms of the external forces would want to capture a state. In most cases, they would go for the judiciary. They say they would go for the media fraternities, and all this crucial. They would take charge on the activities of the civil society groups and all that. So, would you read so much of that in this one, and why is it that it's quite a concern on the language and maybe the quality of adjudication?
When I came here, the first opening remarks I said that when the devil is about to attack you, God uses a demon to attack the devil.
Okay.
And that is what I said before even they came in. Secondly, lawyers, and he answered my question, lawyers are supposed to behave in a particular way, whether inside or outside. They are not laymen.
Okay.
And when they are pronouncing, they have to accord you the title you deserve. How many Mr. Kenyatas do you have in this country? Kids who are born and they're known as Mr. Kenyatta. We are talking of President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. You cannot reduce him just because you are perpetual and stupid and come down and say that Mr. Kenyatta. You can't do that. In fact, in UK and the US, that is subject to a proceeding. You can easily be charged under conduct regulations. If you are a federal judge sitting in court and referring to President Obama in your pronouncements as Mr. Obama, is forbidden. Unfortunately, anyone can become a scientist, but not all scientists can become doctors. What I mean by that is, we need to know the historical values of a profession before even we talk about it. And Professor Kisiang'ani, my elder brother, you should know that lawyers are predicated on a language that they have to use. Especially if you are a lawyer of that magnitude from Harvard University, and we talked of first classes here, Harvard University, you are equivalent to a federal judge in the US. You've gone to the best institution where you ought to know better, and you are a professor in that case.
And probably just to loop in, Professor, briefly, and maybe to equate this, as basic as it may appear, if you are pronouncing a judgment, or you are pinpointing at the fact that President Uhuru Kenyatta, instigated this conversation of a referendum or amendments to the Constitution, and you say that he should not, in his capacity, do that because he's probably not just a mere citizen, or so to speak. And then at the same time, you are addressing him as though you are addressing any other person. Does it not contradict?
That's why I'm saying people can be concerned about, and I don't have problems with my brother Wajackoyah talking about the rules of the profession. But these rules are not common knowledge. So if they are available and that they are binding, that's not a problem.
To the legal fraternity,
that's okay. But now, when you look at the judges, the mood is this. they adopted the mood of the Constitution. Our Constitution is the supreme law. And it says sovereignty belongs to the people. Article 3 of the Constitution talks about everybody has a right to protect the Constitution. What is developing in this country is people want to elevate individuals to the high echelons of our republic and downgrade the Constitution.
Okay.
The Court of Appeal, the High Court sitting had converted itself, it was interpreting the Constitution. And that is the supreme law. And when you are interpreting the Constitution, you must be ruthless. You must be ruthless because if anybody does something about the Constitution that hurts the republic will collapse. Okay. I will give you one example. When you look at the BBI provisions that we have, Linda, there is one thing that I've been looking at very seriously, and which can annoy, actually, it can offend people. The fact that you are in that document giving a lot of power to the executive to control the judiciary through the ombudsman, the judicial ombudsman, but you don't give the judiciary the same corresponding powers to also check the executive.
The executive, okay.
And then secondly, you also have through the appointment of deputy prime minister and the prime ministers given a lot of power to the executive to now manipulate parliament, but you have not given parliament corresponding powers to check the executive. This one interferes with the doctrine of separation of powers and the principle of checks and balances. Okay. Once you do that, you torpedo the constitutional process, you are going to destroy the republic. So I think that is the mood which the judges were using to say that two individuals working together could easily do things that even without intention could hurt the republic. Okay. So I understand the mood because probably as citizens of this country they thought, if this one continues, we are in trouble. Even up to this point I'm talking, where I sit, I think the main thing in BBI was for the executive to control the legislature and the judiciary. But it has nothing to do with that 5%.
Professor, interestingly,
yes.
and I have had legislators here on board, and they have acknowledged that, you know what, they are under siege. Yes. So whether this sails through or not, the process is still ongoing. But before you even say anything about that, Wakili, before I come to you, what is unconstitutional in articulating matters that are of concern and are well articulated in the Constitution?
Thank you, and I value the sentiments of my brother, though I was cut short, and you know when I'm cut short.
Yeah, that's why I came back to you.
The whole thing goes.
The thought is lost.
First of all, the same court that has invalidated BBI is the same court that validated BBI in the previous petitions before it. Okay. They ought to have come up on their own motion and said, this thing is unconstitutional, don't want to go. Okay. They have gone on, listened to this petition after this petition, until now they came and consolidated the position. But the point I'm trying to make is this. We are looking at the president as the citizen of this country. And a lot of lawyers, including myself and everybody, do not really understand the definition of a constitution. If I challenged scholars like myself to define to me what a constitution means, some of them will waffle, or it's a constitutionalism or what have you. But in my view, a constitution is the preamble. The preamble has the phraseology which states very categorically that we, the people, including the president of this country, including Raila Odinga, and under constituent, not legislative methodology, as it has been cited elsewhere, including England, which doesn't have written constitution. They go via the Bill of Rights, emanating up to from Magna Carta to royal prerogatives, which empowers the minister to come up and do as they say, subject to judicial review, where they can propose something, and then town hall meetings will come in. If you look into a Supreme Court decision in the US, which brought in the issue of a president appending his signature on amendments in the Constitution, and therefore expunged the president's signature, then President Uhuru is right to come in and start like any other under the preamble of the Constitution. Similarly, if you look at the case of Kerala, where Justice Bagwati pronounced issues of social active litigation, whereby any person aggrieved by the executive order of the federal government of India or any agent of the state who touches on the Constitution, Article 1 of the Indian Constitution, doesn't need to have a local standi. All you need to do is the following. Either you go through epistolary, by letter, you take a tuk-tuk, rickshaw, rushing to the Supreme Court, telling the Supreme Court that, look, my fundamental rights have been touched on, or the fundamental rights of another citizen has been touched on.
To counter your argument, I'm sorry, I am distracting your thought, but generally there's been this feel that we probably have, in the longest of time, first brought on board constitutions that probably do not relate to the problems that we have as a people. And therefore, in as much as we would want to compare as to what is happening, in the senior world, it's equally very important that we look at scenarios that play out here and handle issues. All right, okay, proceed.
As a comparative constitutional lawyer of international standards, when I'm teaching my students, I have to tell them to look at. After all, if you look at the academics in this country, the majority of them are the ones who have ruined this country by going into motions of writing in commissions and copying and pasting what we have. Oh, the other day we are copying the American system, or that does not work. Let us go to the British system, it does not work. That's why you see all this bureaucracy. But I'm telling you what has happened, which has also taught England, which has taught England from the pronouncements of Justice Bagwati in India, where the English came in and said, if Indians have gone solo and reduced their constitution to the people, where the courts have pronounced rights of the citizens of India, on how to run to the Supreme Court and look at the amenities and remedies available. The British came up and they said, well, instead of calling it social active litigation, let us call it public interest litigation. And now that's why now we come into what you are trying to say. Now in Kenya, the thing that I was trying to talk about is the preamble and where the blame on President Kenyatta is, where the blame on Raila Odinga is, as citizens of this country who have a right to vote because they have voters card, don't they have rights also to bring in what you call popular designs to amend the Constitution?
They are citizens before they are at that particular level. Wakili,
I wish he talked, he explained my distinguished brother. I wish the last statement he has made, he interpreted it in the light of Article 257
of the Constitution, yes.
Because if you could shed some light on the president participating on a popular initiative in the light of Article 257.
Maybe Wakili, all right.
Yeah, this is why I say that a lot of people are confused and they need education.
Yes.
The Constitution itself is not the whole page; it is the preamble. We are looking at the physiology of we the people. We are not looking what is beneath it. And maybe my brother here.
That was a smart way of now throwing it to you, Wakili. In regards to that particular point, of course, because then we need that to be expounded some more for the people to understand. But most importantly, to imagine that this process has gone through the key stages that we speak of. The fact that the signatures have been appended, the fact that it has gone to the level of the county assemblies and has sailed through, has gotten to the level of, the House that is in Parliament, has sailed through to reach at this point of the courts and get stalled. Is it really proper for the courts to have taken that direction? In as much as we say it raises about 50% of issues that really are of concern.
I think the higher courts together with the High Court as legal issues, when something is governed by the law and the law is not complied with, as it is declared either in the Constitution itself or any statute, then you cannot fault the judges for making a finding that this is not in accordance with the law. Okay. Because remember, we have a Constitution that requires them to do exactly that. And if they were failed to do that, where it is clearly pointed out that this appears to be illegal.
Probably our biggest concern then would be on what it is that Professor raises. Let's go back to the National Assembly. Let's go back to the Senate. Let's go back to the county assemblies. These are individuals that we elected to go and represent our interest, oversight, legislate, look at some of these crucial issues. And they raise concerns as to the constitutionalism of this particular process. But they go ahead and vote for the same, and vote yes for that matter.
Yes, I was going there. What has happened since the second term of Jubilee, politically, appears to have been, you can no longer say that the National Assembly, the Senate, or the county assemblies themselves really made conscientious decision in accordance with the law for whatever that they were doing. And it leaves a lot to be desired also of Parliament to say whether the President of Kenya, particularly the presidency of Uhuru Kenyatta, has sufficiently been oversighted by Parliament, not just on account of BBI, but on the basis of many other things like loan procurement, like holding the president, how you appoint ministers. The High Court was taking up issues. The fact that vetting exercise is just a formality or is even ignored. You see, those in a presidential system are critical matters of the Constitution that unless those institutions take them seriously, then you cannot say that you have a working constitutionalism. But that is directed to answer the questions that you're asking. But for me, the bigger question is probably bigger than that. The notions, the principles of autochthony, that let us have a homemade constitution. We are Africans, we are all these. I have a lot of respect for that and disrespect equally for the people who engage in copy-pasting in the name of making a constitution. Now, if we choose, for example, that we are a republic, republics have been there since Athens, then we have to ensure that we have a republic that can stand amongst other republics. We are not a monarchy. If we say that we are going to have a presidential system, then you cannot have, for example, a presidential system in which the president would be appointing cabinet ministers without parliamentary approval, like BBI is trying to do. If you are a republic and a constitutional democracy, then there is the question whether the powers of the president and the connections with the other offices that are being created must be looked at properly to see whether they make technical sense. I adore these issues of content with BBI. But to say that, and what is it that made BBI the poor for it? It was poor for it because objectively, and Professor Kisiang'ani raised the issue, that if you had a problem with how certain important technical issues were being captured, there was always a risk. Anybody who disagrees with what appears to have been a bad job from a technical point of view would easily be called Tanga-Tanga. Even sometimes you would be asked, where is Tanga-Tanga's offices? Because who has ever been seen there before somebody is declared as Tanga-Tanga. You get it? So that the Constitution, in my view, is for everybody. I have no problem with the president and Raila Odinga initiating the process because they are citizens of Kenya. But the bigger problem that I would have, and I took this to Parliament as a responsible citizen and lawyer, to go and tell Parliament, to say that the Constitution of Kenya says Parliament is supreme law making, and on this I disagree with the High Court bench, but still say, if citizens of Kenya come before Parliament and say we have this problem with a bill, popular or not, and we have these issues to raise, that Parliament can do nothing, and then at the end of the day, the true reason why Parliament can do nothing, it is because this is a bill by President Uhuru and Raila Odinga. But when the heat comes that has been brought by the court decision, you start telling us, and who will take you seriously, that the promoters are Junet Mohammed and Dennis Waweru. It is important that you must distinguish. Don't tell people that sometimes this is a position, sometimes you want to take a position that, like, people may be idiots. Which Kenya, unless people are idiots, can genuinely believe that the promoters of the bill is Junet Mohammed and Dennis. These are agents. Your agent cannot, if you're not an idiot, you must ask, this is whose agent? These are agents. So for me, they should not try to take a cowardly position. They are the promoters. But the people who signed it for them are their agents. The way we represent clients every day. I sign documents for them, but I'm their agent at the end of the day. I'm not the principal. So the point I am making is this, that if the process was good, and the motivations were good, I've said that. then there is somebody who will take the credit if BBI passes.
Okay.
This is Uhuru Kenyatta and President Uhuru Kenyatta and Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga.
Okay.
If the heat comes that now who are the promoters of BBI, you cannot say it's not you. It would be dishonest. Okay?
All right.
So that, and the bill itself, 257, he raised a technical issue. It is important to point out that when you read those provisions, for example, it says, the popular initiative requires certain actions by the people and parliament.
Right.
That's actually what the law says, and I've done a technical paper on that. Now this BBI process was being processed by an argument that was a very strange legal argument that has even been taken by the High Court. I don't know why we are not congratulating the High Court on that, that actually Parliament should do nothing. If you say that the Constitution says Parliament and the people, certain actions to be done by Parliament, certain actions to be done by the people. For me, the role of Parliament is supervisory. So that if in the bill you get two powerful people like the President and the former Prime Minister trying to sneak illegal provisions into the constitutions, it falls on the Parliament of Kenya to say this cannot work. That is not even the role of judges. That ought to be the role of Parliament. But now when you have the jurisprudence in your mind that Parliament cannot do anything, that is where you run into great danger in my opinion.
All right, Professor, and on behalf of his boss, Attorney General has moved to court to probably challenge this or appeal this in a bid to rescue the BBI bill after a shock verdict. A couple of things that he has raised in regards to just dealing with this. Let's just pick this one that has been captured on the paper, about 4 or 5 there. The decision that the president, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta, violated the constitution was irrational and not subject to litigation. The president, both as head of state and as a citizen, has a constitutional right to instigate and promote constitutional changes through popular initiative. That the ratification by the county assemblies and endorsement by more than 1 million Kenyans is a demonstration that ordinary citizens owned the document. That the government participation in promotion of the bill was meant to support the aspirations of Wajackoyah. A couple of other things have been raised in regards to this. Does he stand a chance?
No. You see, this is frivolous.
All right.
you get the point?
Yes.
A first year, well-taught first-year law student can't make this mistake. These are distinguished lawyers. They are here. I don't know whether the papers are quoting him right, the Attorney General.
There was that release that was there. We have the release. I actually have the release.
You see, if that's verbatim, the lawyers will talk. But let me just give you an example.
Yes.
You know, this republic is not the 1963 republic. When you say millions of Kenyans ratified, Linda, you probably have a village background like myself.
Yeah.
Go there and ask whether anybody in your village ever got a copy.
When they got 4 million and something.
And then they got 4 million. We had, it is documented, MCS being promised financial favors in order to vote for the bill. Now, this means nothing. Who is a nursery school kid here? Let me ask you. Even these lawyers, even if you want to cheat, be a little convincing. This process is unconstitutional. It was conducted badly. It exposed people. Then they said you can't stop anything. All this, when now it comes to interpreting the Constitution, and you go through the steps under Article 157. 257. I think the lawyers will poke holes into what the Attorney General is saying, and it will be more embarrassing than the ruling. You see, even if a judge is your drinking friend, please do something that can make the judge defend you. That is what Kibe Mungai is. He has spoken about it. So he says, you are my drinking friend. Okay. But the law says this and you have done this. So you want these judges to go and ridicule themselves by saying things which are unlawful and unconstitutional. The best thing, and some of us have been suggesting, instead of wasting public funds to go into an appeal, my brother here is a very distinguished lawyer. This is a distinguished legal scholar. They have said they recognize there are serious issues about this BBI, which should have been sorted out, but I think fellows were too big to be talked to. Now that the courts have pronounced themselves, the guys who won the court, got the court decision on their side should not be arrogant.
Okay.
But even those who lost should not sulk, should not cry. This is a moment given to us by the judicial ruling to look back and say, where did we go wrong? We can restart the process.
Okay.
And do the right thing.
Professor, we're looking at timelines.
No, the question of timeline has come because people, I told you, this BBI was turned into a weapon to fight Ruto.
Is it?
Yes.
Would you confidently say that?
Yes, because they were saying he's opposing, he doesn't want peace in 2022. But if we really think that the constitution making process goes beyond Uhuru Kenyatta's regime, goes beyond Ruto's attempts to become president, we can do it right. We have enough time to do it. But if you peg it to 2022, then you have a problem. Remember, in 2000, the interpretation of Uhuru Kenyatta, President Uhuru Kenyatta, actually I respect him so much. So I usually call him President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Right.
I hardly call him Uhuru Kenyatta. I call him President Uhuru Kenyatta. I respect him so much, and by choice. You get the point?
Yeah.
So President Uhuru Kenyatta sat down with Raila Odinga, and their prescription, their diagnosis of the Kenyan problem was that we have a contested election because the executive is not expanded. Yeah. But the truth of the matter, that is a misreading of the Kenyan situation. The Kenyan situation is that we have a contested election because the IEBC has had faults, flaws in the way it conducts the elections.
Okay.
So all we need to do is to address the question of conducting elections in a free and fair manner. Once we do that, we remove the politics of people trying to interfere with servers and so on. That is fair. That is not equivalent to saying people of Kenya are asking for a constitutional reform. Where? I think my brother Kibe, you participated in it. I remember you had some things to do when we had this Bomas process. I remember you gave some legal advice on the Bomas process. Now, which Kenyans, which Mama Mbokas, there were Mama Mbokas who left the villages and they could not speak in English, but they could only speak in their mother languages, who are delegates at the Bomas. These are the people who are asking for change of the constitution. What has changed? This is what we're asking the president. Where did this thing go? Who in the villages where I come from in Bungoma asked for constitutional change? Now, the bigger issue has concluded this remark on this matter is this, Linda. The people of Kenya want a full implementation of the constitution.
Okay.
That is what they want.
All right.
We have not implemented even Article 10 on national values.
But it's still open.
Yes.
I mean, the dynamism allows us to.
Do we need a constitutional reform? A change of constitution to expand the executive in order to realize the values that are stated in Article 10? No.
We have pinpointed lots of discrepancies and lacuna, of course, within the current constitution as it is constituted. Would we then be unfair to imagine that someone can instigate an amendment process just because there are a couple of other things that need to be addressed, and not to try to counter what it is that a professor speaks about?
First of all, law is not law until it becomes law. If you look at the Lewisian theories, which is an American theory, they say that what is on the face of the statute, or what is in the face of congressional emancipation, or what is within the Constitution, cannot be law unless tested before the courts, which has just happened in what has happened. With due respect, I agree in totality with Professor Kisiang'ani's presumptions. But what I don't agree with is the lawyers going into court, instead of taking advantage of what is so nice for the rest of Kenyans to follow, they go there and act illegally. The illegalities, that's what I'm concerned with. Thank you.
What is it in this case then appears to be the illegality on the entire process? And do you agree that this was more or less like a process of expanding the executive? And what is wrong in expanding the executive if then we're going to get value for money, if then we're going to get good leadership?
I think for me, that's a crucial and important question. I am concerned about, for example, the usage of the basic structure doctrine to appear to make it almost impossible and difficult for the people of Kenya to amend the constitution. I am not happy entirely with the manner in which to say all the structures of the constitution consist of the basic structure of the constitution that are not amendable, because as I have always understood this doctrine, it refers to a couple of things. For example, the idea that the judicial decision should be made by judges. So that, for example, you cannot amend the constitutions to say the president can directly sign an order to take you to committee or the legislature, or they used to have where you sit on trial by the parliament and you are jailed. There could be the idea that the president is not a monarch, so that if the president leaves power, we do an election for us to decide who is our next leader. So that there are those critical ideas and lawmaking. If you are to make laws to governors, we must also elect you so that you cannot abolish elections. Those couple of ideas have been described to be that when you are amending the constitutions and you are a republic, there are certain critical ideas that goes with being a republic in terms of accountability of the law. Citizenship cannot be stripped of meaning. It means something that I am a citizen of Kenya. I'm entitled to the protections of the Republic of Kenya that is due even under international law. So all those ideas are those that cannot be compromised by way of an amendment. But having said all that, the people still retains the power to amend their constitution in a manner that accords with the law. Yeah. The Bombers of Kenya process, the original one that he talks about, this was an idea whereby they sought to amend the constitution and parliament, namely politicians, would make all the decisions. The case of Njoya versus Republic that I had the privilege of arguing was an idea that was developed by, amongst other, Professor Kibwana, Dr. Gibson Kamau Kuria, Kepta Umbati, and those other noble people who are involved in the process, and Mother Karowa and Kiraito Murungi and others, to try to say, no, the people have a role to decide on how their constitution looks like. The High Court, and it did something very well, and the Gotv have been accused of judicial activism. The fact that you have a referendum and the people's sovereignty in the first place is recognized expressly in the constitutions comes straight from the judges, particularly in the Njoya case, who said the final decision on the constitutions of Kenya must be made by the people themselves, and how the referendum came into existence in the first place. Therefore, even as we talk now, judicial activism even in America and other places, because politicians must be allowed to vote and they always respond to the biases of their people, you could never have expected that the American, particularly those from the South, that they were going to facilitate the Civil Liberties Bill and civil rights. The civil rights largely came through the court process. And the court, it is not that it was coming from them. They were just saying, no, if we have a constitution that says all people are created equal, and the constitution is governing America, it is then the responsibility of the judges as a judiciary to ensure that this is put into practice. Okay. You cannot have 3/5 men, as it was in America. Yeah. The all men are men. Now, to come to the content of BBI. Briefly. BBI has many contents that you would have a lot of technical difficulties with. Yes. But again, it also has something that I think is nice. Okay. From the limited perspective of Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, in the sense that we had two elections, personally as Kibe Mungai, I believe, particularly the 2017 elections, NASA lost it by a big margin, and it is demonstrated in parliament and all the assemblies You get it? But despite that, you had a problem that it is a difficult elections. Now, as a person who is a practitioner in this area, and I also try as much as possible to study constitutional law, it appears to me, reading Noabueze and all these even African scholars, that we've had a difficulty in Africa where, for good or for bad, you elect a president, but we do not have the institution and the culture to prevent him in the middle of his tenure from turning into some kind of a dictator. So that the appeal for the presidency in ours is the fact that knowing that this president is going to be a dictator, let it be our dictator who would do things for us. Why do we, with a constitution that says parliament will allocate money? Why do we all go to the president that we want this to be given, we want these others to be given?
All right.
Yet the constitution itself says it is parliament.
So we still
because of this, therefore, BBI, yes, this is the last position on this. The BBI was good to the extent of now saying, instead of having difficulties and making the presidency the matter of life and death, why can't you get all these people making noise around who want to be in power, give them a fair opportunity?
How
to call
realistic
some
is
shots?
that?
You know, the reason is this. It's a practical position as long as they will not be convicting anybody and making laws in that cabinet. If you say Uhuru Kenyatta will not make all decisions, he'll make the decisions, or Raila Odinga or Ruto when he becomes president. He will decide this president with a number of additional colleagues who are not people who takes his orders. Probably that's not a bad thing.
Okay, let's allow Professor come in. Let's allow Professor come in on that very note.
That point, I have a problem with that issue you raise about expanding the executive. You say these people who are hanging around. If you look at the architecture of the BBI and you look at the positions which had been created, there are two fundamental things that come out. These positions that are being created will still be controlled by the executive.
There's still one person.
So even if you made me a prime minister, let me tell you, Linda, even if you made me a prime minister under BBI, I will not accept.
Okay.
Even if you beg me, I will not accept, because I will be just a dormitory prefect for the executive, and I don't want. So that's one fundamental thing. The second thing, the same architecture.
All right. Now, and that is what they are after.
And if I now go back to my place in Western Kenya, and then I tell people that I'm in government, and then they tell me, okay, you are in government, so help us get a few things here, build schools. Then I go tell the executive, and the executive tells me, where, Nyamaza. I keep quiet. So how am I representing my people? So that is the first architectural default in what? In BBI. The extension of the executive is just the extension of the executive control of the judiciary and the parliament. And then the second thing, which is critical about thing, is that the architecture of this BBI, in creating those positions, there is a belief, and it runs through BBI, that this country belongs to 5 communities, and you can see even how people have been meeting. You have seen, you are in the media, you have seen the cameras. When people meet to discuss the problems of Kenya, you see a Luhya there. You see a Kikuyu there, you see a Kalenjin there, and maybe Kamba, then the other people become peripheral. You can be sure that that expansion of the executive is going to this same group. You don't solve the problem by saying, okay, this will bring national unity. It doesn't. So that's why some of us were saying, we needed to talk about this. Thinking about Kenya was not a bad idea, but the way you are expanding the executive, you are even creating more problems than you are solving.
There's still room for talking about this, and that's why we say it is a dynamic document, in the sense that, any time that these issues that have been left out can always be raised. Why should we focus much on the fact that, let's have all this incorporated? Professor has been silent for quite a while. Yes.
I'll just make sure I'll be conscious of that. You see, in making the constitution, we seem to reduce everything to the presidency. As a practicing lawyer, I have represented, for example, people from the corner tribes of Mandera. Now, those people, historically, there were some Bantus of some kind, some of them were slaves, all these kind of things. Now, they are discriminated amongst the Somali. They have been fighting fights with them where they just want better representations at the county assemblies. There are some tribes next to Lake Turkana whom some critics dishonestly say, when will be a Dasanech become a president of Kenya? Now, you've never met a Dasanech. Some of you have never met a person who is from the Kona tribe. Those people, they are concerned, they want representations in their county assemblies. Now, the presidency across the world, because this is a game of numbers, okay? The presidency always go at the key position at the national level to the main communities.
All right.
Because this is why even when Obama becomes president of America, is under a Democratic Party supported largely by whites, and where the Jews call a lot of control, and he's effectively their agent. But you cannot say that he went there because he's a black American. You would be lying to yourselves. So the idea of even to expect that, oh, the Americans, why is a red Indian not be a president, and how soon should it come about? It would defeat democracy where people have one vote. Artificially, you can try to go the way of Ethiopia. You had the, are they called what?
Tigris.
These people who are being fought. The Tigris. The Tigris call shots in Ethiopia, but these people are 6% of the population. You could never going to have a stable Ethiopia in which a small percentage of people take power and tries to lord over everybody. It was always going to be an unstable system. So that for me, BBI, and again, I am a cautious supporter of BBI, cannot be faulted by simply saying, can we advance peace by ensuring that major population group don't disturb this country. Now, if Raila Odinga, the last one, if Raila Odinga was a Samburu, and I believe we can be honest with this, it is highly unlikely that he would have a lot of capacity to have bothered President Kenyatta so much as to handshake with him. Raila Odinga, in the first place, the handshake becomes because Raila Odinga is a Luo, a dominant group in Kenya. As a Samburu, he will never have gotten the handshake. We cannot run away
Numbers
from
very
that.
important, Professor, as we come to a close. And also, what are the likelihoods that you say you're confident that I know the Court of Appeal will probably contradict the ruling, as of course given by the High Court. In the event that it upholds, what next?
Kenya will continue being what it is, from where it is now. But one thing I have to say is people are celebrating very seriously, but let me caution them. The matter is ongoing and they might be disappointed. And now if you look at those...
Why do you have that confidence? Because, you know, for the longest of time, this process has been looked at as, you know, a process that is being bulldozed by the state. And that is the biggest fear that we have today. We do not want a process that has been forced down the throats, that is unconstitutional, as said by the court. So why would the proponents have the confidence that, you know, they are likely to see a win at the end of the day?
I think today I was here to discuss about what happened in court.
Yes.
And that's what I am going to stick to.
All right.
I'm not going to perpendicularize myself into lunar politics.
Are we not going to look at the factor that politics plays in this?
Well, that's why I'm saying I'm not going to
proceed
to make a prescription of lunar politics.
All right,
because at the moment I don't like living into hearsay and myopic kind of pronunciations. What I need to speak here is, and I agree with what my friend Kibe Mungai has said, is that the issue of proportional representation is what is lacking in this country, so that a small man where he is can also have a taste of power. Raila Odinga and Uhuru are not going to live forever. 70 years from today, some of us who are over 60 will be dead and buried, but the constitution will live on. And probably the realization of this constitution, what's ongoing right now, could be beneficial in the future. So whatever happens, whether this house, this tribe, this clan wants to come in and do what have you, fair enough. Whatever it is, I don't care. But one thing is, we have luminaries who have come in to say that unless so and so is there, the whole thing is dead. But these people are also going to die. What we are not talking about is the corruption some of these luminaries have been involved in putting this country where it is today, that prompted the president and and Raila Odinga to come up and say, look, the country is just looted completely. There is campaign to take over to loot it again. What do we do? That could have been the main thing that brought this to where it is today. But now the looters have changed out to be the celebrators of what's happening, the messiahs. They will be shocked. And I'm telling you, people's stomachs, the stomachiosis that are in us scholars, I'm not saying here, us who go to be paid to lick people's noses so that we are seen in public to be supporting them. That's recklessness, that is stupidity, that is myopic. Let us look at that child. Let us look at the future of these small kids. Are we going to have a trait of some kind of politicians in this country who, unless they are in the system cannot move on? People like Kibe ought to have been an attorney general. In fact, if he was on the list, I would say yes, not because of his tribe. I've been brought up by Kikuyus. Do I need to say that they are bad when lawyers did not take care of me? That is cynical. Therefore, and I'm speaking very authoritatively today, normally I speak very neat. We, for example, from Western, we are born to follow, to leak. We don't come to self-realization of the contents of the needs of the young people in this country. If it's not this way, it is this way. Come on, come up as a man and stand on your own, or as a woman and stand on your own, and move on and be counted. But don't just follow. What is the solution? Thank you very much.
All right. Well, Professor, how do we speak about this and overlook the aspect of politics? Reality is that it shapes what will play out in 2022. Generally, it has clearly been associated to the political terrains as we see today. That's why you had said that, it probably was designed to fight the likes of the DP. As we close.
There's always politics, and that's where we went wrong. You need to, when you are making a constitution, we know that politics will always be there, and but you need to manage the political process so that it doesn't look like you are fighting an individual. And that there will always be politics, but how do you manage it? At the point when the proponents of BBI started attacking the deputy president, that alienated his supporters, and the president should have stopped that and said, this is our document, everybody's there. And even the deputy president was courteous enough to attend the bombers' presentations. And then to suggest on the floor what he thought would be done. But what he was answered again politically, he was heckled. And so his supporters realized that this document is about silencing him, and it was not very good. So we needed political leadership which can stop that and say, keep off this. It's not about Ruto. It's not about Raila. It is our own process. But when we come to the last, there are two quick things. I was born in Western and brought up in Western Kenya. But I don't think I'm part of the we Professor is talking about.
The briefcase
I am a very independent thinker, and even on BBI I'm an independent thinker. So and I've done that many times. I've written articles, many things. So I am not part of that. I'm probably the exception. But then what we need, what I agree with my brother, because of the same issue of politics, is the fact that it is not yet over.
Right.
That is a fact, because politics can play a role. But even if it is not yet over, because we have this application, I think, in the High Court, which the High Court will deal with it, whether they can vacate their own orders. That is the first thing.
All right.
But as they're doing that, then if they don't succeed, they are going to the Court of Appeal with a substantive appeal, and then there is the Supreme Court. You see that?
Yes.
We are going to go a full haul of the Supreme Court. But Linda, what I leave you with is this: whatever we do, even if orders are vacated, there are very many issues to be addressed to bring back the BBI on track.
All right.
Mere court orders will not bring back the process the way it was intended to move.
Right.
We shall have to meet as a nation, agree, sort out these technical issues before the process moves forward. It is badly damaged. It is badly injured, and the process cannot just go back with these injuries. They need a doctor.
We're extremely out of time. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Okay, that's clear. I think he has made a good summary of the fact that
what next?
Whatever a higher court Supreme Court or Court of Appeal decides on the High Court judgment, serious questions of legitimacy of the process have been raised.
Right.
We cannot lose sight of that. Number two is the fact that in making the decision to challenge this, and invariably it must be challenged, let us again not appear to be hasty and acting on the notion, like I was talking about the grounds of appeal that we are seeing here, that the High Court was obviously wrong.
All right.
The position appears to be...
we have to close.
Yes, the position to me appears to be that unfortunately, a High Court that was inclined to make a scathing attack on BBI was given so much opportunities to have a meal on it.
All right.
So that let's avoid the scenario, the gun mentality,
close this one.
That the High Court judgment was so obviously wrong. I don't think it was.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. Lawyer Kibe Mungai, Professor George Wajackoyah, and Professor Edward Kisiang'ani. It was great having you. Great insights. We look forward to host you again. Thank you so much. We close this conversation, get to a different one altogether after this break.